Welcome to Satsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Satsunami. My name's Satsunami and I am absolutely delighted to let you know that this is our 150th episode. This is the final episode of Season 3. But before we go on, I just want to introduce the one and only co-host. You might have heard him before. It's none other than Andrew. Andrew, welcome back.
Whoa. Hold on a second, Satsu. It's me. It's Craig C, and I think you've miscounted. You've actually got 2 episodes to go. I'm here to make that right. I'm here to talk to you all about travel today.
I have my suitcase packed and everything.
Well, what a great time to talk about traveling. Let's get into where you've been, where you love, some tips. Let's get yourself ready for the 150th episode.
Hold on a second. I'm going to have to make some phone calls to cancel some flights. I'll be right back.
Push it back. You can get a taxi to the airport. We're good.
Okay, we're going to have to speedrun this episode. Right, let's go through the list of countries. Good. Don't go.
Good guy.
Oh, so yeah, Craigie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this. How are you doing tonight?
Not too bad. So, I was going to say alluded to, but as you blatantly alluded, yeah, today we are going to be having a very casual conversation all about travel. So, you might remember a time before the 2020s, where planes didn't fly upside down, trains actually ran, well, maybe boats still sailed, but that's beside the point. It was a different time.
What a specifically British joke as well is like Germans and stuff listen to us like, no, all our trains run on time. Any Japanese listeners like, no, the trains run instantly.
Oh my god, you're right.
It's just for the UK's public transport system's atrocious.
It really is. On the one hand, it is connected, but on the other hand, it's like, Jesus. Because I remember I was meeting up with a friend and we decided we were going to meet up in St Andrews, and I was like, oh, no problem. I'll just get the train up. Spoilers for anybody planning to take the train in Scotland to St Andrews. They decommissioned the train station there. Yeah, because not many people were using it, go figure. So yeah, I had to go to like the one before it, which it all worked out in the end and everything. But I have to admit, as of this episode, I have done a lot of travelling within the UK. You know, like I've gone down south and everything. I've gone to the Lake District. I've gone to London. I've gone up north and things. But yeah, other than that, I haven't really been abroad this year, to be honest. And I feel as if it's only the last year or maybe 2, if you include 2022, that things have relatively started becoming normal again.
Yeah, it's even then, a lot of countries, like just off the top of my head, Japan. Me and my wife have wanted to go to Japan for a while now, and they only started letting tourists in, without a special visa at the start of this year. I think the general access for tourists was only the start of this year. So yeah, it's only really now we're starting to get back into the flow of things. I've been abroad twice this year, and it's the first time since 2019 I've been abroad, and even still on the flights and still on the airports, you're still seeing that post-COVID fatigue, I don't know what you want to call it, but there's still signs in places, there's still wear masks, there's still this. Yeah, it's still happening.
Yeah, it definitely does feel a bit weirder. I don't know how else to describe it, that way where it's just like, it's quite strange, because I remember during the height of COVID, as it started to wind down, there were so many adverts of countries practically begging people to come over to be like, it's safe here, please. And I remember the one that made me laugh was Turkey. I've never been to Turkey, but I remember it was like an advert where this wee boy, it was all narrated by, that really annoying actor they always get in to dub over another actor, and it's like, wow, these people had scanners. They look just like robots. Haha. Oh, this is the best holiday ever. And they've got the massive face masks and everything 2 feet away. Yeah, this isn't enticing me.
Yeah, it's a hard sell.
So here's a semi-controversial question to you before we go abroad and we talk about our experiences, because you and I, of course, we've been to Dublin and Sweden together.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Dublin and Sweden. Dublin and Stockholm.
I was going to let you run with that and just see what lies you had to tell to get fixed that.
Yeah.
We actually went touring in a caravan for 6 months from Sweden.
We went to an IKEA, okay? It was a big IKEA. Okay, well, they're all big, but you know what I mean. So here's a potentially controversial question before we board the plane, as it were. But when you're on a holiday in the UK, do you prefer going up north or do you prefer crossing the border down south?
My answer's kind of specific. So, me and my wife like a lot of hill walking, and she's like the most qualified person on the planet when it comes to hill walking and general outdoorsy stuff, rock climbing, stuff like that. So, typically, we'll either go up north on the west coast of Scotland. We did the North Coast 500 a while back, and the east coast wasn't too interesting for us, but the west coast was incredible, and the Isle of Skye's up there. But if we are going to go down south, we then go to the Lake District, which is basically the equivalent of going of going up north, especially where we live as well, where it's like almost the same distance travelled to get to either. So that's kind of us. Yeah, we'll typically go northwest or medium southwest. I don't know how to explain that. What about yourself?
No, I would totally agree with that. I feel as if I am going down south, I would probably aim for maybe the Lake District, because I do love the Lake District. It's so picturesque and so scenic. You know, you've got all the very quaint towns. You've got Ambleside, Keswick, Windermere as well. You've just got all these lovely towns. And see, if you're a dog owner, the Lake District is actually perfect, because I feel as if you see more dogs than people down there at times. The amount of shops that were just like, come on in, take your dog in. And of course, my puppy was just like, oh, I can't wait. Oh, what's this? What's that? Trying to speak in a doggy accent. And I'm like, come on, don't do that. Yeah, it's lovely. Whether you get the weather or not, it is just absolutely gorgeous. But again, I totally agree with you. If you go up north, there are so many picturesque towns, especially Skye as well. As you said, Skye definitely has changed over the years, because I actually remember when I was about 5 years old, give or take, 5, 6, I went there with my family, and I remember it was nice enough. We went to this like cottage place, and I remember it just being two houses and just fields upon fields. And then I think it was the last year, the year before, when we returned there, yeah, there's like houses everywhere now. So it's completely changed, but it's still absolutely gorgeous. And of course, you've got Elandonnan, which is the castle just before you go into Skye. And there's just so many nice places, really, when you get up north.
Yeah, and it's kind of what you're alluding to. Skye's boomed in popularity over the last few years, Isle of Skye. And if you are going to try go, I guess this is my insider tip now. If you're going to go up to Skye, take a hit on the weather front. Maybe go like in September, October, or the start before the season. Like we, or if you usually go up in like March if we're going, because it is just so busy now during the summer. Buses and buses of people. It's great. So many people are coming to see it, but it's also a tiny island. It's not, or a tiny isle. It's not really made for that many vehicles on the road and so many houses. So it does get pretty crowded.
It's one of those picturesque places that you think it looks beautiful and everything, but then you crack your head a degree to the side and then you see all of these tourists saying exactly the same thing. You know, when you go abroad and you see that one thing that people rave about, whether it's like the Mona Lisa, whether it's the Sistine Chapel or like the Taj Mahal, something like that, and you're always told that, oh, it looks amazing in person, and then you go there and it's like everybody is there and they're all crowded round. I mean, again, Skye is a beautiful place.
One of my favourite memories of Skye, when my wife went up, we went wild swimming. So you just get into your swim shorts and jump in and went to the fairy pools. Absolutely beautiful place. And it's got this like stone bridge you can go under, and it's all this beautiful like waterfalls that come down to these pools. And so we went for swimming it, and just as we jumped in, 2 busloads of tourists turned up, and there's like 100 people just watching me and Ainsley having a swim about. Hi everyone. I'm in basically like probably close to 300 pictures that day, because everyone was just like taking photos.
Oh my god, I can imagine.
Amazing. I've never seen any of them.
Well, yeah, true. They're on somebody's Facebook. Because I actually remember visiting the fairy pools, and it was a relatively bleak day. It was all right, it wasn't too bad. But I remember we went there, and one of the people who worked there was like, "Oh, by the way, just be careful. We've had a slight bit of rain, so there's some flooding." And the bit where you park your car and you have to walk through these kind of stones, and there was like a gap in between. And why they didn't just have like 2 planks of wood over it, I've got no idea. But yeah, it's just you had to wade through it to get to the other side, which I know sounds like the start of a very bizarre joke, but yeah, you had to like wade through and then jump up and everything, and that was all fine. But yeah, it was really weird. But once you get there and you actually see the pools, they are beautiful. And again, I know exactly what what you mean, because when we went up, my family and I, we did see the same thing. It was like a lot of couples going in and a lot of groups just diving into the pools and having a swim about. I suppose with caution and seasonal advice there. Go when it's not freezing. There's so many places in Scotland that you can go beyond the reaches of Edinburgh and Glasgow and Stirling. But going back to what I was saying before, you and I, of course, have been on holiday together. We went to Dublin, first of all. And I have to say, like, I'd went to Dublin with my family before that, years and years before we went. But that was an interesting holiday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really good. I think we tried a good mix of here's a whole bunch of touristy stuff we have to do. We also I remember we just spent a lot of time just having a mosey, which is like my favourite thing to do on holiday, is just to kind of see what's happening.
Oh, no, absolutely. Because did we not find that food market?
Found a food market, and probably one of my favourite memories is we found a Mongolian restaurant.
Oh, that was so good. What, the Mongolian barbecue?
Yeah.
Oh, I still talk about that to this day.
And one of my favourite parts of it was when we left, and on the way out, I was like holding my stomach. And we went to this woman outside, and she goes, "Oh, was it not good then?" I was like, "It was the best food I ever had."
Oh, it was so good. I hope it's still there. See if it is. I'll take a camera and be like, for the love of God, go into this place. It is amazing. Yeah, it works kind of the same as, I'm assuming, most Mongolian barbecues where, you have a very small bowl, you pack it with the raw meat and everything, and then you put some sauce in, and then they just cook it in front of you, and then they put it in a bigger bowl, which I thought, okay, that's a bit of a swizz, but still, and you can go up constantly for as many bowls as you want. And I agree, it was fantastic food. Absolutely incredible. The one the night after, though, when we went to that Indian restaurant was nice, but Jesus Christ, I think it burned several holes in me that night. Did I ever tell you that when we went to that restaurant and I had ordered, I think it was like a jalfrezi curry, and I remember, and this sounds so stupid, but I remember having a jalfrezi curry from, I think it was Marks and Spencer's of all places, and being like, oh yeah, I can handle a jalfrezi.
Yeah,
Oh,
easy,
of course.
easy.
Spoilers, no you can't. It was so spicy. You and I both had red faces. I'm all like, water, please. Oh, but it was so tasty, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's good.
But yeah, you're completely right, though, because we went so many places. We went to... In fact, did we not go to a really nice cafe, Queen of Tarts or something like that?
That sounds familiar. But yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, that sounds like me.
The only reason I remember is just because of the amazing name for it. But I just remember that being down like a side street. It wasn't like it was out in the open to see. It was just kind of there. And you're right, we did have a good mix of just plodding about, and just seeing what was there, as well as targeting some of the bigger things like the Christchurch Cathedral, was it?
The Guinness factory as well.
The talking fish.
The talking fish, the fish on the bicycle. Dublin was great. I really did enjoy it.
Oh, it was. It was a great holiday. And it was only like, 3-4 days?
Yeah, we packed a lot. I think it was 3 days. I think we went on the Friday and came back the Sunday. I think we properly packed it.
I mean, to be fair, it doesn't take long to get over.
No.
You, but even still, yeah, you're completely right. And it was the same as well, jumping onto the plane going over to Europe, or the other side of Europe, when you and I went to visit a mutual friend in Sweden. Yeah, we packed quite a bit in there as well, didn't we?
Yeah, we went to Stockholm for 3 days or something. Well, my excuse was that there was wrestling on, so that was why I had to go. I don't really know how it all came about. I guess I was trying to remember last night. It was like, how did we actually end up arranging this trip, and why did I get to go to the wrestling? Like, of all the weekends we were all free, how did it end up being the one that WWE were in town? Class, well done, Craig. I can't really remember that, but yeah, Stockholm's an amazing place. Again, I don't want this just to become like a food blog, but good food. And yeah, we went to this crazy living zoo. I don't even know what to call it. It's like a museum with a zoo in it.
Yeah, that was a weird place. Like, it was fantastic, because the first part, you're right, is a zoo, and then the second part, they've got all these very old Swedish buildings that they said they kind of carted from one place to the other. Oh yeah, we're just going to keep them here for people to see and everything. And again, you got that amazing bread in one of them where it was like, oh yes, please. But yeah, you're right. It was really weird but amazing at the same time. Yeah.
So I went back to Stockholm
Without me?
without you, I'm afraid. And we actually missed something that I went back and did with Ainsley. And actually, this is now my biggest recommendation to do in Stockholm. It's a warship. Unless you did do this, and I'm getting my memories mixed up, but there's a museum dedicated to a warship called the Vasa, and basically it was like this ridiculously massive ship that couldn't float particularly well. I mean, they took it out to port and immediately sank. But what they managed to do was basically salvage it more or less intact in the 60s and just pick it out and stick it in a museum. So it's like this huge big boat from like the 1600s just in a museum, like all completely built up. It's unbelievable. So that's like my number one recommendation of things to go do in Stockholm is that, because it honestly blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it. The scale of it is unbelievable.
Because I remember we went to the art museum.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And what I didn't realise, and this kind of shows my ignorance for this, but I didn't realise that Stockholm was made up of different tiny islands.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. It's really interconnected, like lots of little bridges and stuff, isn't it?
And it's so weird because we walked by, the building where people get their Nobel Peace Prizes and things
Yes.
like that. And it was just so weird to be walking in this amazing city and just being like, all right, someone cured world hunger over there, or someone did this and they got a Nobel Prize. And we are walking on the other side and this really lovely cafe and things. And it was just a fantastic city. I was only there for, well, as we said, a couple of days. And yet it left such a big impression on me, I have to say. That's my top recommendation. That's like, if you want to go somewhere, definitely go to Stockholm. I mean, the only other thing I was surprised at, and this is something I'll probably bring up in one of the other countries that I visited, but it was very cashless.
Yeah, I actually had a story about this, and I was going to tell it. I'm glad you brought it up. Last time I went to Stockholm, so like I said, I went back with my wife, and we went on a night out with some Swedish people, and one of them started laughing at me because I tried to pay in cash, and the bar was like, no. So much so that they actually like were all looking at the cash, like, oh, I haven't seen one of these notes. Like, it wasn't like a massive note, but it was one of the probably ones they give to tourists. But it was like, I haven't seen this note in years. I didn't even know you could still get them. I was like, oh come on, it's like a £20 note, lads. Like, calm down, because it's not euros they use; it's their own krona. But they were popping off that I wasn't using card.
I remember you had actually told me that no, you don't need cash or anything. And I remember even telling my family, and they were all worried, being like, no, you should get some cash to take or something like that. And I was like, no, I'm sure it'll be fine, because I was trusting your word on that. So I was like,
why did you do that?
I can't imagine that's, of all the pranks you could have pulled.
The old cashless prank.
That old classic, yeah, got him. It was quite strange to be like tapping your card and everything, and it's something that I think that we don't in the UK. I mean, it's something that we don't really do. We started doing it a wee bit more, to the disgruntlement of a lot of very peculiar people, mind you, but that it is that sense of there is still cash going around.
Yeah, I've never seen someone in the UK say no cash, please, and we saw a lot of that in Stockholm.
Yeah, because I mean, funny enough, I think it was a couple of months ago, I went to a farmer's market with my partner, and bar one particular woman who was like, no, cash only, the majority of them took card, which it has changed days, hasn't it? It seems to be the case for a lot of countries, just like Luna speaking there. Yeah, I have to say, that was something that, going a bit more further along the globe, that was something I was really surprised at when I went to China in 2018. Because funny enough, you and I went to Dublin in 2017.
And then you went, wow, that's way too close and way too short. I'm going to go spend. How many weeks were you away for? It's like 2 full weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah. Because it was like the debate between 2 or 3. And I'm going to be honest, I went to China by myself. Well, I say by myself, but I went over with my partner, and it was the first time I'd ever been to China. Really, it was one of the only times that I've been abroad alone. The only other time I've been abroad on my own, well, I say alone, but technically the only other time was with the school. Because you remember when we were in school and we had the activities
Oh,
weeks, where it's like, you said that with such conviction.
Trepidation.
Oh, God, yeah, where they weren't great at all. I mean, it was interesting that, we got to give money over the year, and then it was like, oh, you can go abroad with the school, and long story short, they weren't as fun as you probably would imagine, some of them. Obviously, usually it'd be places that were relatively close, like it'd be France, Germany, Spain. I went to Spain once or twice. I'll get back onto that, but yeah, going back to China, I have to admit, of all the places I've been, that was definitely one of the biggest adventure holidays I've ever been on. You know that way, because I know you'll probably feel that with some of the places you've been, where it's just a completely different society, completely different from what I know. And what I found amazing as well, going back to the cashless thing, was there was a lot of people either on the side of the street or in these like touristy places that had QR codes slapped on these Tupperware boxes of food they were selling. All you would have to do is just scan it with your phone, and that was it, because they used WeChat Pay. So yeah, it was really bizarre, just because I was standing there with my yuan, just like, oh wow, I can't wait to pay with cash. And then, my partner's like, no, 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 let me show you. And then, of course, bam, use your phone. Yeah, I mean, between going to the temples up there, because I have to admit, although we went to other cities like Hangzhou, which is great, that's got the big West Lake and that's got a big history behind it. But when I went to Shanghai and kind of the last day before I had to catch my flight back, there was so many tourists in Shanghai. You know that way when you go to a place and you kind of go off the beaten track, you're talking with the locals and everything, you're getting to know about the real culture and things like that, and then you go to a place like Shanghai and immediately as soon as I got out there, I just came face to face with this stereotypical Englishman on holiday. I mean, it was a lovely city, don't get me wrong, but have you ever felt like that? You've been to a place where you have been off the beaten track and then you come across all the tourists after it?
A couple of ones, but one that always stands out to me, I think was really funny, is when I went to New Zealand. We were there for 3 weeks, and my wife and I drove for most of it. So we got to see, like, obviously tourist locations, but kind of things less off the beaten track. And we pulled up to these hot springs. I can't remember the name of them now, but we pulled up to these hot springs and pulled into the car park. So this is quite one of the bigger tourist places. Pull into the car park, and we couldn't be further away, but do I not hear a Scottish accent? And they're bragging about not having to pay for parking at the car park because the car park meter's broken. Like, come on, lads. We couldn't be further away from Scotland, and you're just bragging about saving a quid. So yeah, that's kind of mine. And you know the worst part about it was I was really pleased to be saving that pound as well, but I couldn't tell anyone about it because they'd stolen it all.
Oh, it's a cultural thing, isn't it? To be fair, I probably would have done the same thing. Would you say that was your most adventurous holiday?
It's either that, because like I said, we've done a couple. So a couple spring to mind. So that one, just because we were away for 3 weeks and it was such a big one in terms of like, we didn't know where we were sleeping at night, we didn't know where we were going to eat and stuff like that. The other one we did was our sort of first adventure holiday, was we just drove around Europe for 2 weeks, which was class. What's really cool about Europe, as in mainland Europe, I should say, is they have a much better like campsite culture than we do. So like, we have this van it's not got a toilet or anything, but you can sleep in it. So you can pull in just any campsite and they'll take it. And it's unbelievable, because we're pulling into like campsites in France and they'd have like star ratings outside, like a hotel would have like, oh, it's a 4-star campsite and stuff like that. Some of the memories from that, which is some of the weird places we ended up, because we had a few main destinations to hit, and obviously to keep ourselves, so we weren't going to miss our ferry by 6 days. We had to have like a bit of a timeline, but no, that was unbelievable. And then recently this year I went to Cuba for a week, and we went to Havana, and then we went out to the national park area, which out there, which is unbelievable as well. So I've done quite a few actually. Now I'm starting to list them all, but yeah, I think that in terms of most adventures, probably Cuba, just because it was so weird. That was like, I guess, kind of similar to what you had in China, where it's so not for tourists in the sense of like, it's just their culture and you're turning up into it, which is pretty cool. So that was probably the one I would say is most adventurous.
Because I mean, the only one I can think of, and technically, it was with family, so it wasn't exactly like I was living on the edge with that one. But the weird one that I had was, and I know you've been to America as well, but I ended up in Chicago, of all places. It seems like, and I don't mean this as a Chicago thing only, I just mean America as a whole, because for a country that, we've seen lots of America on TV shows, we've seen, I mean, we're both Simpsons fans and fans of those kind of shows, so we know about American culture, but it's so weird seeing it through a TV and actually being there. Just one of the examples I can think of off the top of my head, and this is going to sound like a weird one, is and I get why they do this, but the service over there, it really unnerves me, because no matter where you are, usually, let me paint the scene for any American listeners, for us here in the UK, if you go into a shop, you might get maybe 1 or 2 people coming up to you saying, are you looking for anything in particular? Can I help you? And as soon as you say say, no, I'm fine. You wave your hand. Well, don't wave your hand, that's rude. But you go, no, I'm fine. That's it. They'll leave you alone. But for American staff, whether it be in retail or whether it be in restaurants especially, I think there was 3 separate times I had a mouthful of food and they were like, oh, is everything good? And it's the same way when you're at the dentist and they've got their fingers down your mouth and like, oh, how does that feel? And you're like, well, I can't answer you. Yeah, did you find that when you went over?
Oh, 100%. It is crazy. Obviously, it's a very big tipping culture. That's kind of why. One of my favourite ones is we went to Las Vegas, and as you can imagine, very similar. They're all over you. They want to be this like super top service that you leave tips and all that. One of the bars had like a gimmick. All the bars in Vegas had a gimmick, but one of them had a gimmick where the staff were like rude. That was the joke, right? The staff were rude. It's a bit like, I think there's one just now is kind of going viral, like Karen's Cafe or something. Kind of the same idea, but it's bar staff. But the whole joke is they're rude to you. The problem was they weren't. They were just polite to you, but with swear. So it was just the exact same great service that everywhere gives you, but they were swearing. And it's like, I didn't want this. I wanted someone to give me a drink and ignore me. That's what I wanted. I wanted someone that wouldn't smile at me when I asked for a drink. That's all I wanted. I didn't want top level service. I wanted the British service.
It's so true.
There was a cafe down the street from me. I used to live in a wee town not far from where I used to live. It was this like one-man cafe, and the guy would open the shop at like 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And if, you'd been having a couple of drinks or whatever the night before, you would go get your fry up from... And what was amazing is he was always hungover, like way more than anyone else was. So he'd be standing like over this grill, like trying not to throw up. You'd order like, oh, can I get a roll and square? And he'd be like, geez a minute. And he'd open the window and just look out it for like 2 minutes, start cooking and just be like leaning, heavily breathing, and like give you like 220. You'd give him it, you go, cool. And then I go back to the window, and that's what I wanted from this place.
The mental image alone is incredible.
The sweat's pouring off the guy, man. That's what I want from American service.
You hear that, America? Write that down.
This is what you're doing wrong. Stop being so nice.
So here's a question for you, because I'm suspecting you might have got this in America, but I don't know if there was any other country you would have got this. Have you ever been singled out for being Scottish? Because let's face it, they usually go for the Scottish part before they realise, oh, you're a tourist as well.
All the time. One of the ones that springs to my head is I was at a shooting range in Vegas. So it was like obviously like ex-military people that ran the place. And one of the guys is like, oh wow, you're Scottish? It's like, yeah. He goes, so what did you think of William Wallace? Because he's kind of like a terrorist, right? I was like, that is such a loaded question. I don't know what to do with that. How do you deal with that? People love Scottish people abroad. It's one of the things I'm most thankful for when I go places, that people like Scottish people.
Oh yeah.
Typically, like New Zealand, very fond of us. Lots of other countries, especially when I went to France recently, and they're quite fond of you out there as well. I think being English is like so much worse. I'm pretty thankful, actually. I'm Scottish. What about yourself? How have you found it?
There have been a couple of instances, I have to say, where people have pointed to me and been like, oh, look, it's... it's a Satu in the wild. I remember going back to America, there's been, surprisingly, it didn't happen as much. There was 1 or 2 instances where people were like, oh my god, where do you come from? And it's like, oh, Scotland. And then that was kind of the end of the conversation. There was no follow-up, there was no verbal ping pong. I was like, come on, give me something. But it was just like oh, cool. The only thing I can think of in America was I got ambushed by a guy in a McDonald's of all places. And it wasn't so much for my accent, but it was more for my height. And he came over. Basically, long story short, he was trying to sell postcards or something. I don't know if this is like a common thing in America, because it seemed as if whenever you went on a train or public transport, there was always a guy with a speech prepared before they started coming round with a hat for donations. Any Americans, listen to this, please feel free to let me know if this is a common thing or not. But yeah, it was like, oh my god, you look like you play basketball. You're that tall and everything. And I'm like, okay.
Just for the reference here, for obviously the sake of this being an audio only thing, you are not that tall. I'm not saying you're not tall.
I'm tall, but I'm not NBA tall. No.
No one in the NBA is looking at you and going, this guy, this is the man we need.
For reference, I'm over 6 foot, but that's about it. Like, it's a comfortable height. Like, it's tall enough to get by in daily life. But the best one, I have to say, and the weirdest was, as I said, when I went to China, because the places my partner and I were going, we were going to places that weren't very, and I'm using this in the nicest way possible, weren't very tourist oriented. And by tourists, I don't mean tourists within China. I mean tourists as in outside of China. Like, if you're from outside China, you would go to places like Shanghai, Beijing, places like that. But the places like Hangzhou or, these other cities that we were going to, everybody kept looking at me. You know, when you get those old Wild West films where, the stranger from out of town comes in, everybody looks at you. That happened to me on a daily basis when we were on holiday there. The thing was, it wasn't out of nastiness or anything. I think some of the people genuinely had never seen someone like myself.
Never seen an NBA player in the flesh.
Yeah, an NBA Red Panda in the flesh. No, nah, I don't think so. But one of the funniest things was, because my partner speaks Mandarin, she was translating a lot of things that people were saying about me. And it was quite funny. There were things like, I tried on a traditional hat in China. It's like, we get the bonnets for older people, like the flat caps for older people here. It was like their equivalent, and I've still got it. But I remember I put it on, and this woman who was selling it, she looked at me and she went, Piao Liang, Piao Liang, which essentially translates to, oh, so handsome, so handsome. And I'm like, yeah.
Yes, I am.
But I know, proudest punch, but the funniest one was the amount of kids who, they were obviously kids, they've got no filter, and there was one kid who turned round to his dad and he went, Baba, Baba, Lao Wai, and said, Dad, a foreigner. And the dad was like, don't be rude. Then he turns to his mum and he goes, Mama, Lao Wai. I was like, oh my god. Yeah, I got the same thing when you were talking about the fairy pools. I got the same thing of, do you know those like cutouts you get where you put your head through and you get the photo? I got my photo with one of them, and these two Chinese teenagers came up and they were laughing because obviously they didn't know there was this, as you said, NBA player there. And then all of a sudden their phones raised and they started taking pictures, and I'm like, I'm on some like random Chinese person's WeChat or something. So that was an experience, I have to say. It wasn't like people were being aggressive about it, although just one last thing about that before we move on. I actually remember we went to the cinema and we went to see this film called Detective Chinatown 2, and basically they go to New York and they have to find the killer. And slight spoilers if you're never going to watch us, skip ahead a couple of seconds, but the killer turns out to be the only other Western character. And I'm sitting in the front of the audience as the only Westerner in the cinema, and I was like, come on, let's go. Other than that, it was a fantastic experience. But that was, as I said, 2018. Because do you know what the weird thing I find about traveling is? It's the fact that, see, when you're like, oh, that was an amazing holiday. Like when we were in Dublin, I think, oh, what, that was only like, 2-3 years ago? That was 6 years ago, nearly.
Yeah, time's a flat circle. I think that goes as like a testament as well to how the memories you make when you travel, though, in a way that are so fresh and so vivid. Some of the ones I've shared today, like I was driving around Europe at that time, and that was 2015, I believe. And so memories like that, they don't go away. I think the first time we went to Stockholm was a long time ago as well now. And you were mentioning school as well, and I think it just goes to show you traveling and tourism in general. It's like unbelievable that we're so lucky to be born in an era where we can do this, and we're lucky enough to have the funds to do it. Because yeah, the memories you make, I know it's a cliche to say, but I think you've kind of proved your own point of it. The memories last a lifetime.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. Because I always remember when we were in history class together and we learned about the, of all things, I can't believe I'm bringing this up years later. Our teacher would be proud of us. But remember when we learned about the locomotives, and that was the beginning of when people in Britain started to go on beach holidays and things like that. That was kind of the first form of people going travelling for holidays, and obviously there's a big ruckus behind it of, oh, is it good, is it not? But you're completely right, it is amazing how, well, maybe not nowadays, but you know what I mean, it is relatively affordable now to be able to travel the world. It's so much easier just to pop on the internet, book a place and be like, oh, this looks like a good place, or oh, I don't know about that. And especially with the rise of Airbnbs as well, that's another thing that's, I mean, it's been going for the last, maybe 10 years. But yeah, things are changing though, aren't they?
One thing I've been quite conscious of is this will might draw the ire of some people, but here we go. So a couple of years ago, I went vegetarian.
Boo. For legal
Boo,
reasons, that was a
boo.
joke. Sorry.
Eat meat. No,
Beg your pardon.
So in our travels before the year 2020, I didn't really care about food or whatever. I would just eat whatever. I'm a lot more health conscious now because I'm also vegetarian. And so now I have to be a bit more savvy about where I go. And I can just do that on my phone. I can just look it up before I go. I can just type in, oh, is this place vegetarian friendly or not? It's so simple now to get access to any piece of information, book any hotel. You mentioned Airbnb, but even things like hotels.com or whatever. They've got the biggest database ever gathered of anything. Most hotels and most places have like pictures now, so you can look ahead, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And again, this has always been available in our adulthood, but the ease of it and how much I'm actually looking at because I need it has changed so much, and it's so easy. Like I went on holiday to France. I'm actually just back this week, and we're in this tiny wee town called Molayet. It's like a beach town. I can use the Happy Cow app, and it instantly just brings up every vegetarian option of every restaurant in the area. And it's like, that's unbelievable. Like, you can do that. So I just think, that side of it, the access of information, you can find out anything now so easily. You can book trips weeks, months in advance. Just we're so fortunate to be able to do that, I think.
Funny enough, when I was really young enough that I wouldn't have remembered it, but I went to Malta with my family, and I remember talking to my dad about it, and he was saying he didn't really enjoy it because this is something that I think every single British person probably will relate to at some point in their life, that see, when you go to another country, you want to have some degree of familiarity, but you still want something that's slightly different. I don't know how controversial this is going to be, but you go to places like Malta where half of it does, I mean, the country does speak English as its main language, but it also has Maltese as well. And it's got a fascinating history. I love Malta, but I remember my dad saying things like, oh, because there were so many British tourists there, they were quite unruly, which unfortunately is a stereotype for, I mean, I want to say it's more down south, but let's face it, I feel as if it's only more down south because there's more English people than Scottish people, but
it's only more down south because English football teams do better.
that is true. That is true. But I mean, when I went many years later to Malta, I absolutely loved it because we were out of that sphere of where all the British tourists were gathering. Don't get me wrong, obviously there was still tourists in the hotel, like a horror movie. They're in the hotel. But it was amazing to be able to see all of these places there without the pressure of someone coming up to you and being like, oh, we are from the UK. And it's like, yeah, I can see that. As they come draped in the Union Jack. Of all places, I remember one year I ended up in Spain and we went to Valencia. That's a beautiful place, and it's been a while since I've been in Barcelona, but from what I remember of it, it was nice. But I also went to Benidorm just after Christmas time one year. I actually think it was probably the same year that you and I went to Dublin. It was nicer then because there wasn't as many, because Benidorm, for anyone who doesn't know, it's very infamously British. It might as well be the new Gibraltar because the amount of British tourists, the amount of British businesses that set up there, it's absolutely crazy. So I apologise to all our Spanish listeners. Lo siento. But yeah, it was quite strange going from that and then you go to Valencia, which I know is a bigger city, but it's weird, isn't it? Other than obviously that guy. Have you ever had that?
Yeah, I think it is weird, and I think this comes back to kind of what you mentioned about familiarity versus things you're new to you, and everyone's got like a different threshold for that. Like I said, me and my wife, we don't like to stay in one place for very long. When we travel, we like to do like city hops and going around in a van or whatever. And so we kind of see both sides of that, and you see cities as well when you do this. You see certain cities are set up really well for tourists. Some cities set up well for tourists. I'd say some cities are set up too well for tourists, like they cater into tourists. Barcelona's quite famous for this now. Like the locals hate it, how much it caters to tourists. But one that always strikes you is my brother. He used to be a rep for Thompson's, an entertainment rep, and so he was living out in, I want to say Mallorca. I can't remember if it was Mallorca or Mallorca at the time, which one he was at this for this season I'm talking about. But it was in one of like the proper British holiday resorts, and obviously it's like Thompson's Holidays. And there was 3 restaurants in the sort of little town attached to this hotel. There was just like a wee local restaurant, so it was like that's where all the locals would go. There was I can't remember what the other one was, just like a generic restaurant, and then the last one was like a British pub. And every single night, the British pub would be spilling out into the street. There was so many people trying to get into it. It was constantly busy, while the 2 more traditional places were just empty. And also, that was like fascinating because, for me, traveling's all about seeing what locals up to and eating their food and trying things that they get up to. You know what I mean? I really like that side of traveling, but well, a lot of people just don't want that. They want to get Britain, just because obviously it's British we're talking about, but they want to get Britain with a better climate. You know what I mean? So I always think it's a funny difference. So there is definitely, people are definitely comfortable with different levels of comfort.
No, you're totally right, because there are so many people that when they talk about a holiday, they say, oh, I just stayed in XYZ place, which is perfectly fine if that's what you want to do with your holiday, go ahead. But it always seems to be summarised as, yeah, I just want a suntan. And that's really it. And you're like, fair enough. Here's a question for you though. Have you ever been to a place where you've been disappointed and it's been built up and then you go and then you're like, oh God, this isn't as good as I thought?
No, I don't actually know if I have. Maybe in terms of not having the best experience, maybe London is the only place I can think of off the top of my head where I do like bits of London. I went in a heat wave, and London is not set up for a heat wave, and everything's extortionate. Maybe London, but London's still got these like great things in it. So I've never come away from anywhere being like disappointed. I can't think of anywhere I've been like completely down in the dumps about it. London's probably the one that springs to mind as being like the hype it gets versus how good I think it is isn't equal, but I wouldn't say I came away from any trip disappointed. What about you? What would you say?
Yeah, I think I'd be the same. I can't remember really any holiday that I have been severely disappointed that I come back more miserable than when I left. But echoing what you were saying in London, my partner and I went down to London a couple of months ago, as of recording this episode, and again, there was a heat wave down there, not as bad as sometimes it really gets. But the thing I don't really like about London is, and again, this is coming from a Scot, so take it with a pinch of salt, but it's so overcrowded and everything. Like, there's some bridges where I felt as if I had to like fight my way through, because again, I don't know if it's just because there's so many tourists or people don't care, but people have no sense of lane discipline. When you're in like Glasgow, Edinburgh, any place in Scotland even, and you stay on the left, if you want to go one way, people coming towards you will be on the right. That's how you're taught to do it. But here it was like I was weaving in and out. It was like Rocky Balboa. Weave, weave, weave. Okay, we've made it. And I lost my partner. I'm like, oh God, where is she? And turns out she's behind me. But that was a bit weird. The only other thing, and I was telling you this at the time, was we went on a tour bus because we had walked all around and then we were getting a wee bit tired. And I said, well, because we got the London Pass, which, is this like kind of accumulation of different sites you can see and everything. And yeah, it was like, oh, we've got this ticket free with this pass. So we jumped on the bus, and lo and behold, I saw without getting too deep into this particular thing, but we saw the Just Stop Oil people right in front of our bus. And literally, if we were 5 seconds faster, then yeah, we would have been past them. But we were stuck behind them for, of course, like about 15-20 minutes or something. And obviously, you can't get out. Oh, the tooting of the horns. That was a symphony in its own right. But the only other one I can think of, going back to one I was talking about earlier, probably was the Sistine Chapel of all places. Because, I mean, I've been to Italy before. I've been to places like Sorrento, which is beautiful. The Amalfi Coast, if you haven't been there, that is gorgeous. I 100% would recommend that. Rome as well, Pompeii. But if you go to Rome and you see the Vatican, that's amazing as well. But if you go to the Sistine Chapel, the artwork outside of it's beautiful. There's all these amazing paintings, very rich, full of emotion and whatnot. But then you then you get led down this kind of winding staircase, and you have all these Italian guards who are just shushing you constantly as you go down. And you go into this room and you look up, and I kid you not, it's that, the painting where it's God touching Adam's finger. It's tiny. That picture. You look up and you're like, is that it? And of course you've got them yelling in Italian, no photos, no.
It's funny because I actually thought as well, like the Last Judgment, which is on the wall, is a way better piece. And I was like, I was really surprised that the ceiling's actually so famous when it's in the same. I didn't realize it was in the same room as Last Judgment. So when I was like, wow, that sucked, and this is amazing. And yeah, you're not supposed to talk in it or whatever it was. So it was like you're getting constantly shushed all the time. That was weird.
I mean, I've been to Paris before, but Disneyland technically doesn't count. And the last time I was up the Eiffel Tower, yeah, I think Nokia were still in business. So for legal reasons, that's a joke. But yeah, like I've been up the Eiffel Tower and everything, but I've never really been to the Louvre where, they've got the Mona Lisa, and I've heard that there's like far better pieces. It's just because that's widely renowned. And I don't want to say it's the size of an A4 sheet, but that's the way people make out that, oh, it's tiny, you can't see it from a distance and everything. The only other weird one I had, and this might, I don't want to end in a downer, but this kind of leads into the unfortunate side of cons on holidays, where my brother and I went to Berlin one year. Absolutely fantastic city, mind you, but we went to Checkpoint Charlie, and there seems to be a lot of people cosplaying as American soldiers right in front of it, as if the Cold War never ended. But something that I saw, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, are the petitioners that come up to you and they pretend to be deaf, or, they've got some kind of problem, and they try shoving a clipboard in your hands and they want money, essentially. That happened twice to me. That happened once in Berlin, and then once in Spain as well. But other than that, and getting conned, technically the only time I feel as if I've ever been conned was when my brother and I went to Malta, and we went to Sicily, because I think it was the hotel or whatever company we were with, they organised like a tour to go over there on the ferry. And funny enough, I think that coincided with the Olympics that were in London at the time, because it was on the ferry TV. But sorry, that's a side tangent. But we went on this bus tour, and I kid you not, the bus driver actually took us to this random shack in the middle of nowhere, and it had all these jams that they were selling, and it turned out it was his friend or something like that. The tour guide knew the guy who sold the jams, and literally in all the guest book it was like, why the hell are we here? Why are we here to thingy jam? And then at the very end they took us to this volcano that was there, but of course we ran out of time to actually go up it because we were too busy, pardon my language, too busy fanning about with jam to actually go see it. So the insult to injury, of course, was when we were coming back in the bus and they had the nerve to put on the DVD about all the wonderful things you can do in Sicily, and then they had the cheek to ask for a tip to go drinking, and it was like, that'll be right. But yeah, have you ever experienced that?
I've actually been quite lucky for that kind of thing. Obviously, you get various scams. Just have to don't hold on to anything that people offer you. But yeah, I've actually been quite lucky for that. But you do hear a lot of stories. My uncle works on a cruise ship, and he will go out and sample tours before they offer it to people. And yeah, he went on one in Egypt, and apparently it was like 10 stops, and it was just all just random stuff like that. I was like, oh, my mate owns this shop, my mate owns this shop, and it was like. It's like, why are we here? Yeah, I think that happens quite a lot, especially when you've got just like a busload of tourists.
Funny enough, speaking of Egypt, I remember I was looking at, I think it was like a photo someone had taken from the pyramids, and it's a place that I've never been myself, but they always make it out as if the pyramids are like miles
Oh,
and miles
yeah.
away from civilization, and literally the guy turned his camera and the city's just like right there. You could be working in an office block, look out your window and be like, oh yeah, there's the pyramids. The amount of times I've looked at it and been like, oh yeah, there's like a famous hill. I'm like, okay. And people are like, oh my god, it's so scenic, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah, I suppose it is.
because kind of in a closing point, that is something that is the cool thing about being a tourist in another country, isn't it? Because when you live in Scotland for obviously as long as we have, you get used to all these sights, don't you? This sounds like such a first world thing to be like, oh, I'm so sick of the verdant countryside and the rolling hills and things and the crystal clear lochs. But, is it something that you get used to being here for so long, isn't it?
Oh, totally, it's totally true. Like, I think that's the same for everyone. And like I said, I was just back from France, and we were chatting to people that were living out there, and they live in this like beautiful coastline. It's like one of the best places in the world to surf. And they're like, yeah, it's alright. You know, because of course it's all right because they live there and we're the same. I think especially for where we live, in the central belt of Scotland, it's so easy to just be like, it's all right. It's like, oh, by the way, it's 2 hours away to the Lake District, or it's 2 hours away to the most famous hills in the world. Tons of movie studios try to recreate in every one of their films. You know what I mean? It's these idyllic, as I said, they're like lochs and stuff. And we've got one of the greatest in Edinburgh, like one of the most famous cities in terms of castles and, things like that. And it is something I think we do take for granted. And I think when you go away, it does make you appreciate home base a bit as well. I do say, like, for all the cities I've travelled to, I think only a couple I would ever say I would live in more than I would Glasgow. Glasgow is such a special city, and I think going away other places makes you go, all right, actually, hometown's pretty cool as well.
No, that is true. Even though I've had some really amazing travels and holidays and things, there is just something nice about, stepping off the plane and then hearing a thick accent or just someone screaming in a Glaswegian accent. You're like, oh, I'm home. It is. It's just, it's so weird that you do take it for granted. But I suppose traveling does make you, appreciate it more.
Yeah, 100%. Just to reiterate, I think we're in the best times to be able to do this. We're so lucky for those that can do it and can afford to do it. So we living in the UK get enough holidays to be allowed to take holidays. Thank you, government. So yeah, no, just get out there if you can, because it's pretty cool. Visit places, spend money, eat well, have a good time.
And yeah, if you want to reach out to us and let us know where you've been, places you want to recommend in your home country, feel free to reach out to us at podpage.com/chatsunami. We have a very handy dandy contact form for this very thing. Totally not fishing for foodie suggestions.
I am. Please recommend all foodie suggestions onto Pod page so I can get them. Thanks.
That's true. Because otherwise, if we did do like a travel foodie vlog, I would just not stop talking about that Cuba bread that I ate in China. Which I think I have told you that 1,000 times, haven't I?
Yeah, but actually, one final question, I guess, before we wrap up. Actually, where are you going next? Where's next? Where do you want to go?
That is actually a good question. Before COVID, if I would say between 2017 to 2019, I travelled quite a bit. I travelled to China, I travelled to America, Ireland as well, Stockholm. I travelled a lot. And I remember in 2020, I thought, right, this is going to be my year. I'm going to do a lot more travelling. I'm going to see the world. Boom, COVID. No, get back in the house. So unfortunately, I couldn't travel. And I feel as if I still kind of suffer from that almost anxiety about traveling, because recently, over the past couple of years since lockdown's been lifted, I would say that I've travelled kind of up north to places like Skye. I've been down to the Lake District. I've been down to London, but I haven't really been anywhere abroad. So next time, really, my partner and I have been looking at places around Europe. We've often talked about maybe going to Italy, or maybe trying like a completely different country in Europe like Austria. I've heard that's beautiful. There's parts in Spain as well which are fantastic, Germany as well, or I might just drag her back to Stockholm. Honestly, the world's our oyster at this point. But what about yourself?
Ains and I have been planning a trip to Japan for God knows how long, and I think that's the next one. I think I'd love to go to Japan. One of my friends went recently, and I was just like jealousy scrolling Instagram every day. It was amazing. It looked incredible. So I think that's like the next big one for me. Also, I'd like to go to the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, like the islands at the far north. I've not actually been to them before.
What, like Orkney and places like
Yeah, yeah.
Just on the side note, but Orkney is beautiful.
Yeah, I've heard it. That was my 2020 plans, was to go there. And apart from that, yeah, there's a lot still to see. We'll see what happens next. But yeah, that's the next two, and then any city breaks as well. It's always good to get away for a wee weekend.
Oh, aye, absolutely. I mean, as you said before, it is amazing that we do have that chance to take advantage of city breaks. And I have to admit, it's always quite tempting when you see it pop up and, it's like dirt cheap and you think, there is a catch here. Yeah, you have to hang on to the wing, weighing up the pros and cons. Like, I mean, on the one hand, it is Barcelona. On the other hand, I don't know. Jokes aside, though, Craig, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your travel expertise.
You're welcome. Glad to be of service, and enjoy the 150th episode that I stopped you from recording.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll send you a postcard. Yeah, I cannot believe, honestly, that next week we will indeed be talking about really just our journey into the 150th episode, which crazy to think, isn't it?
Pretty unbelievable.
As I said before, if you want to catch the other 148 episodes before this one, you can catch us on podpage.com/chatsunami. You can also catch us on all good podcast apps such as Spotify, iTunes. Just look for the Red Panda under the name Chatsunami, and we'll see you there. If you also want to catch any of our early access episodes or exclusive content, head over to patreon.com/chatsunami, and we'll see you there. I also want to thank our Pandalorian patrons, Robotic Battle Toaster and Sonia. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. But until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, safe travels. See what I did there?
That was good. That was really good. Right, go catch your flight.
Okay, I'm away. I'm away to call that taxi. Andrew can do the next episode on his own. Welcome to Satsunami, a variety podcast that discusses topics from gaming and films to anime and general interests.
Previously on Satsunami, we've analysed what makes a good horror game, conducted a retrospective on Pierce Brosnan's run as James Bond, and listened to us take deep dives into both the Sonic and Halo franchises.
Also, if you're an anime fan, then don't forget to check us out on our sub-series, Satsunami, where we dive into the world of anime. So far, we've reviewed things like Death Note, Princess Mononoke, and the hit Beyblade series.
If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcast apps.
As always, stay safe,
Stay awesome, and most importantly,
Stay hydrated. This episode is sponsored by Zencastr. If you're a podcaster that records remotely like me, then you'll know how challenging it can be to create the podcast you've always wanted. That's where Zencastr comes in. Before I met Zencastr, I was but a naive podcaster, recording on low quality, one-track audio waves. But with Zencastr, you can kiss those fears goodbye as they provide crystal clear audio and HD video. Plus, with our all-in-one podcasting suite, recording with guests is extremely simple. From local recordings to post-production, Zencastr has it all. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code CHATSUNAMI. You'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experience I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.